94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
I'm your host, Sergeant First Class Retired Don Sorensen, and on today's Soldier Salute, I've got South Carolina Army National Guard Master Sergeant Paul Mead. Paul, tell me about yourself.
Well, Don, I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida. I moved around a little bit as a child, ended up in Charleston, South Carolina. 3 days after I graduated high school, I stood on the yellow footprints on Parris Island. That started my military career, and it lasted for about 10 years in the Marine Corps. Then I chose to get out of the Marine Corps, and I joined the South Carolina Highway Patrol. After I completed the academy, I wanted to continue my military career, so I joined the National Guard. When I joined the National Guard, I was originally assigned to Troop B 202 Cav out of Beaufort, which was a tank and Bradley battalion or company. And then I moved on to a few different units, including the 218th in Newberry. And later I was hired on as the education representative in the education office. And I've been in that position for about 14 years now. And I've moved through all the positions from the entry level to running the office.
Paul, Semper Fi, brother. You know, I had a few years in the Marine Corps myself, and man, I loved those years. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your Marine Corps career?
Well, when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I came in what they called open contract. So I was pretty much at the mercy of whatever they gave me. Of course, I ended up as a grunt in 03 and did a lot of training in that field, deployed in that field, and went to Kuwait, went to Iraq. Deployments were pretty fun for the most part, getting there and coming back because we rode on the Navy ships. But after I returned, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I had to reclassify to a different MOS, and I ended up in the 01 field, the administrative arena, and I finished out my 10 years as an 01.
Now, Paul, you traveled by a Navy ship. Did you have to go through any of that pollywog and shellback craziness?
Yes, sir, I did. I am a golden shellback. We did the shellback ceremony on one deployment, and then on the way back from Australia, we crossed the equator and international date line, and we did the golden shellback ceremony, and I'm a card holder.
Now, guys, if you're not familiar with what a shellback and a pollywog is, I highly encourage you to go out there and do a little bit of Google research because, man, that stuff is messed up. Paul, I find that a lot of the guests that I have on the Soldier Salute have this almost like a lifelong commitment to service, and you're no different, brother. You left the Marine Corps and you go into the Highway Patrol. Tell me about that.
Yes, sir. What I did was, while I was on terminal leave in the Marine Corps, I always wanted to be a police officer, and a friend of mine was like, hey, join the Highway Patrol, so I did. The academy was 5 months long. It was very intensive, a lot of PT, a lot of testing, but upon completion of that, I was stationed down in Beaufort, which I subsequently joined the National Guard back down there with the 202 Cav to continue both my dream of being a police officer and fulfilling my military service. To complete my 20 years was the original goal.
Paul, there's a lot of us, man, National Guardsmen that have that Eagle Globe and anchor probably tattooed somewhere on our body or on a sticker on the car. It just seems like a natural transition, man. Tell me about that, leaving the Marine Corps and becoming a National Guardsman.
Leaving the Marine Corps to the National Guard was a huge adjustment. I experienced a lot of soldiers that had not the discipline, I guess you could say, I was used to in the Marine Corps. It was a big transition, but after a few years, I was able to adjust a little bit and adapt to it.
Paul, former Marine with 3 deployments under your belt, then your Highway Patrol, and now your Army National Guard. And you happened to be activated for a Homeland Security mission back in 2003, really when our operations first began overseas. How was that different, man? What was it like deploying with the Marine Corps and then being activated for a Homeland Security mission?
There's a huge difference between those deployments. In the Marine Corps, the intensity, the stress levels were off the charts. The wondering what's going to happen in the next few minutes was always on the front of your mind. Whereas with the Homeland Security mission, we did serve a security role at the Shaw Air Force Base, McEntire, and Charleston Air Force Base. So security was very important. So you still had the intensity, but it was a little bit more relaxed regarding possibilities of violence that you didn't foresee coming.
When you were in the Marine Corps, you actually got turned back because of the whole Somalia thing, like what we've seen in Black Hawk Down. Almost the same thing happened with the Homeland Security. You were in the highway patrol and you get the call that you're being mobilized. Tell me about that experience.
Yes, when my first sergeant had called me that morning to tell me that we're being mobilized for Homeland Security, he didn't say it quite like that. He just said, "Are you sitting down? We're getting mobilized." So, of course, my mind went racing, thinking back to the Marine Corps, going back to Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan. And then he said that it was a Homeland Security mission and we would remain in the States. So that was some relief.
Paul, I've had lots of soldiers, Marines, sailors on here that were active duty and now they're veterans, or National Guard and reservemen that are M-Day or traditional Guard. You're the first technician that I've had in here, and a lot of my listeners may have never heard of the military technician program. Why don't you tell us about that?
The technician program is a great program that allows you to serve in a civil capacity as a general scales or GS level employee. It's not like the AGR program where everything has its own benefits, where the technician had two different types of, they're called titles, Title 32 or Title 5. And the difference is that Title 32 is you have to wear the uniform every day, whereas Title 5, you wear civilian clothes. You're still in the Guard with Title 32. You still serve in a unit. However, your technician job may have no correlation with what you actually do at your unit. For instance, I work in a human resource capacity on the M-Day side, but I'm an education technician and a guidance counselor on the tech side. The technician program has a wide variety of different fields, anything from administrative support at units, or even aircraft mechanics and vehicle mechanics at McEntire Air Base. It covers a span of different job fields.
Paul, not everyone out there is like me and joined because the uniform was pretty. Tell me about the Selective Reserve Incentive Program.
Well, the Selective Reserve Incentive Program, or SHRIP, is an incentive program for you to either come into the Guard or to stay in the Guard. It offers programs such as like the student loan repayment program. If you have loans, you could potentially be eligible to get some of that paid back by the government, or a bonus that you get, throughout your service, throughout your contract. These programs are great tools to either retain or to just help pay off some bills. We do offer a couple different programs. One is called the Federal Tuition Assistance Program, and this will pay up to $250 a credit hour towards your schooling. The other program is our state program called the College Assistance Program, and it pays $4,500 per academic year. So between those two, you can get $8,500 a year to go to school.
Now, this is called the Selective Reserve. How's it different than what the active duty gets?
The active component does not get the same benefits that we do. We have to remain competitive to the active duty, and the SHRIP policy and education benefits that we offer help us do that.
Paul, there's a young person out there listening right now that's either contemplating joining the National Guard or trying to decide if they want to stay in the Army National Guard. What advice do you have for that person?
Well, I'd advise them, if they have contracted or are offered an incentive, to make sure you read that incentive contract. There are stipulations in there that you must adhere to retain that incentive. We hate to take an incentive away from somebody, but many times it's based on something the soldier did or did not do that he should or shouldn't have done. Now, as for education-wise, the Guard will pay essentially for you to get your degree. There's easy programs to use. I would recommend contacting your local recruiter if you're not in, or the education office if you're still serving, and we can explain or discuss what your possible future can hold.
Paul, if someone has already met all those requirements and signed on the line, there are ways that they can lose those, right? They have to adhere to their contract as far as morale. They can't get in trouble. They've got to maintain good PT. Is that true?
Yes, sir. That is true. Those are some of the stipulations in the contract. For instance, PT. If you fail 2 of the PT tests, then you could potentially lose your incentive. One of the biggest ones we see is soldiers just not going to drill. Go to drill, you keep your money. You don't go, unfortunately, we have to take it back. So that's part of satisfying that contract, is to ensuring you meeting the eligibility criteria.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pigs Barbecue. Serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. And by Lexington Guns and Shooting Range, veteran owned and operated.